Let's begin.
Burn, ungodly filth!
What do you want? To make you ours or to make you despair?
Spirit Blade Productions presents...
Do you have any idea how much I will make you suffer? The horrific agony that I will inflict.
Spirit Blade, Dark Ritual.
Hell will be a refuge for you when I'm finished. For more information, visit spiritblade.com. Rejoice, ye penny-pinching nerds! Rejoice! For this is a season unbound by our bank accounts, unfettered by fees. A legendary age of liberty. This is the summer of free! Hey guys, Peter Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Got some more Summer of Free for you, this time with a video game theme, but I went a different route. I discovered recently that, I don't know how long ago this happened, but you can now once again find a number of issues of Nintendo Power available at archive.org. Now, back in 2016, I think the first maybe 13 years of Nintendo Power had been put on archive.org, and then were promptly taken down by Nintendo, who is known for very viciously protecting their intellectual property. But for some reason, the first, I want to say, I don't know how many years, let's take a look here, from 1988 to October 1996. So that's a good number. I mean, it's not 13 years, but it's still a good number of issues, and maybe all of them in that entire run. I haven't diligently checked to see if every single issue, but it looks like issues, every issue 1 through 89, which goes up to the right around the Super Nintendo era, I think maybe just as the N64, was because that's when I was starting college in the fall of '96, and that's when PlayStation 1 was pretty new or coming out at the time, I think, and then around the same time the competitor Nintendo 64, and so really I think for a lot of fans of classic Nintendo, these are really the issues of Nintendo Power that you'd most want to get your hands on to kind of relive some of the nostalgia of the 8-bit and 16-bit era of Nintendo. So this, I really enjoyed looking at these. I mean, you see here on the screen the first issue featuring Super Mario Bros. 2. That's kind of an iconic picture in Nintendo Power cover. But I jumped ahead a little bit. I wanted to see what issues might have some games that I have in my collection that I repurchased a number of years back, that I wanted to have again. And so there's this issue, let's see, January, February 1990 of Nintendo Power that I thought I would just take a little time and walk through with you guys here. If you're watching the video version, then you can see actually the magazine that I'm looking at as I'm paging through it. And I remember this cover. It's funny, and I never played the second Batman game, but I really enjoyed the first one, especially once I had a Game Genie and I could cheat the crap out of it. But I think a lot of video game fans would, especially like retro platforming fans, would tell you that this is really an unusually good game, given that it's a movie tie-in license, or a tie-in to any IP in general. Usually those were terrible, and for a long time, I would say probably up until the Arkham games, Batman Arkham Asylum, and that series started, I think a lot of fans would say this is the best Batman game, maybe the best superhero game ever made, and it didn't tie in well to the movie at all. I mean, it used some images and stuff like that, but as far as following the story and the plot, it barely resembled the beats of the 1989 movie with Michael Keaton. Anyway, so paging through here, it's interesting to come back to this now and see in hindsight, what kind of a propaganda tool this was. I mean, it was produced by Nintendo. It wasn't some third party that was objectively looking at these games and like actually reviewing them and really like pointing out some of the shortcomings and stuff. I mean, it's the more you look at this, it's a really interesting little time capsule. So in this issue, we've got they're covering Batman, Shadowgate, Willow, Double Dragon 2, Super Spike V-Ball, Clash at Demon Head. That's another one in my collection. River City Ransom, and then they got some Game Boy games. Stuff about Game Boy, the making of Super Mario Brothers 3, which was a little bit of there's a little piece on Miyamoto that I thought was kind of interesting. But anyway, let's keep paging through here. The mailbox is really interesting to look at. I guess it was a thing to be a power player. I don't know if that's something that Nintendo was coming up with, but they had a power player profile, I guess, in every one of these issues. And people are writing in, like one person writes in, let's see, where is this? Let's see. You too can be a power player. This is the title above this letter. Chuck from Loveland, Colorado writes, I'd like to know how to become a power player. I've sent in several lists of my accomplishments, but I never get my name in the magazine. What can I do? And their response is, well, Chuck, being a power player involves more than just finishing a lot of games. We'd like interesting stories that illustrate your power playing qualities, or that tell why you think your achievements are special. You should also know that we receive thousands of entries and can only print a few of them, but we do read and respond to every letter we receive. We receive, so keep them coming. Here's the power player profile. Jeff Gilkey, age 16, says, the reason I feel I'm a power player is I can usually solve any game that I get my hands on within 5 days. Some of my more outstanding accomplishments are solving the Goonies 2 in 1 day, scoring over 3 million points in Mega Man, and solving Super Mario Bros. 2 with 72 lives left over. My friends at school call me Nintendo Man, because I can usually answer a question about a game, whether I've played it or not, thanks to the time I spend reading Nintendo Power. My favorite game has to be The Legend of Zelda. The variety of enemies and helpful items make it a great challenge. And with the second quest, I don't get bored doing the exact same thing over and over again. Some of my best tips are, in Dragon Warrior, be patient and raise your levels before you go adventuring too far. There's no way to finish a game like this overnight. It takes time and thought. In Stage 5 of Blaster Master, when looking for the monster crab, don't leave your vehicle until you have to. Otherwise, you may find that you have no way to get back to it. All right, so that's a little bit from the letters. And then this look at Batman here. It's interesting as I looked at this to see. In hindsight, I think you can really see how this differed from gaming magazines that followed it or that were maybe competing with it at the time, and certainly the kinds of things that you're going to find online that are just a whole lot more informative. The format of how they would cover games, it wasn't quite like a review. I mean, it definitely wasn't a review. It wasn't quite a strategy. It was a blend of like a strategy guide of maybe the first few stages of a game, and also just kind of showcasing the features, almost like a preview of a game. Like some of the things they would tell you would be, little tips here, like this flying enemy in the first stage of the Batman game on NES. They say stay low and use the wide shot of the Dirk to take down this flying fiend. Oh, and here's a little bit of trivia. Right before you go into fight like the flying Mothman or whatever the crap at the end of the first stage 1-3, there's like a ninja guy right outside the spot where you go in to fight that boss, who's leaning up against the wall, and then he comes and attacks you, as you're getting ready to go and exit the stage. Well, it turns out here it's KG Beast, which is a character from the Batman comics. They say run up to KG Beast and catch him off guard before he can attack with his sword. I mean, maybe that little detail was included in the instruction manual. I never had the instruction manual to the original Batman NES game, but that was an interesting little bit of information. It's funny how in this early era of games, especially in NES, there was a lot of lore about these games that was contained in sources outside of the actual game itself, like the instruction manual, or like in Nintendo Power. But here's an example of like a tip that's not really a tip. They're just kind of talking about the Batarang reach, that when you're fighting an enemy here, it says Batman's flying wing hits the enemy once going out and once coming back. And it's like, okay, well, if you've never played the game before, I guess that's I don't know, it's a batarang. We know it's a boomerang type thing. It's gonna come back, right? Hence batarang. So it's an interesting blend of preview, maybe that's being generous, propaganda if I'm not as generous, and a few tips here and there. So here's the little piece I was talking about. Game designer profile, Shigeru Miyamoto, who I think for years, like, I'm not up on my Nintendo corporate history or current status quo, but I think he's been like the head of a whole bunch of stuff at Nintendo for a long time. And so to see way back in 1990, just a few months after Batman '89 released in theaters, to see a little piece on him and kind of like his origins in the company is really kind of interesting. Something else that really caught my attention as I noticed it, none of these, I guess calling them articles again might be a little bit generous, but there don't seem to be any credited writers for any of these articles. Like if you read Game Informer, whether digital on their website or in the print version, every article you're going to see who wrote it and maybe a little picture of them. And there's no credit of, I don't think any of the writers. Is it one dude writing all this? Is it like a team of, like, I don't know, people working the midnight shift to get all this stuff done? Yeah, really, really interesting. Here's the top 30 section. This is weird. It's like, did your favorite game make it into America's top 30? And I'm like, how is this determined? Well, you look at this paragraph here. The big news this issue is the sudden surge to the top of the heap by 4 totally tough teenage turtles. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that is. This reptilian revolt was led by the dealers' votes and boosted by the players. Remember, your vote really counts. I'm like, the dealers. Who is that? Are they talking about retailers? Well, what are they basing their vote on? What they think is cool? What they really want to sell? What's interesting to me is I don't know that I'm right about this. I'd have to, do some research, but I think a lot of gamers really hated and were frustrated by that original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game, which has the top-down levels, and then you go to side-scrolling for, like, the underground sewer levels or the swimming water levels and stuff. It was just a really difficult game, a punishing game. Not at all like the arcade Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles games, which I think players really would have preferred to have on the NES and did eventually get ports of later on. But anyway, it's interesting that is in the number 1 slot, and it seems that the quote-unquote dealers are the ones that are making the biggest choice in that. So is that evidence then that Nintendo Power was also working with retailers and, trying to, just more evidence that they're really here to sell these games? But anyway, I thought that was very, very interesting. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles above Super Mario Brothers 2. On this list of top 30 games. Very, very interesting. All right. Then you had these Howard and Nestor comics, which I think even at the time when I was, potentially young enough to enjoy them or something, I think I largely skipped these things. I did not find them funny at all. But, if you've been listening or watching me for a little while, you know that I don't seem to have a sense of humor. I don't laugh at what other people laugh at, so maybe you'll enjoy that. Oh, the Counselor's Corner. I usually skipped past this section. This is just evidence of this pre-internet culture where, the Counselor's Corner was for moments in games that maybe players had questions about, like Legacy of the Wizard. How do I defeat the enemy that appears after I find the 4th crown? That's a very specific question. It's not broad general tips about how to make your way through the game effectively. It's about this very specific part of the game. And so often in Counselor's Corner, I didn't have anything that really caught my interest because they were these very specific things for very specific parts of games. But what I did always look forward to in every issue was classified information. This was, if you were going to find them anywhere in the magazine, where the cheats could be found. So, like, they've got an invincible code for Kid Icarus, and they've got the power punch for bad dudes, which, that's whatever. RoboCop. How to get unlimited continues, which now, in this day and age, it's like that is a given that you can always continue when you die. You can pick up where you left off in your last save or checkpoint or whatever the heck. It's not... The idea of starting all the way over to the very beginning of the game again is like ludicrous almost to think about today. But here back in 1990, ooh, this was a hot tip, a secret code to get unlimited continues in a game. So anyway, that's kind of fun to look back on. Then there's a whole section here in the back, video shorts, which is basically the same kinds of thing they do earlier in the issues where they have big spreads showing like pictures of levels of games and stuff. But instead of that, it's just a much shorter version of that. And it's essentially, again, just telling you some basic preview information about the game, just promoting it, not giving any kind of like impressions of whether or not the game may or may not be good, as say Game Informer would do in their preview section. Even though they don't give conclusive thoughts, they still will freely say, there's some concerns about this, but we'll see how it turns out and reserve final judgment. But there's no criticism of these games. It's just, hey, here's Dig Dug 2, here's the concept, it's the arcade classic, blah, 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 whatever, Genghis Khan, Cybernoid, and what is the description for? I gotta read this. Menacing space pirates have taken over a series of dangerous caves. In your automated fighting machine, it is your mission to eliminate the pirates and keep them from taking over the universe. Even though you have bombs, shields, missiles, and other strong weapons in your arsenal, your assignment is still an incredible challenge. There are 3 levels of difficulty: easy, hard, and lethal. Oh, that's interesting. That wasn't a very common thing back then, to have difficulty levels. And even the easy level will keep... Oh, wait a minute. When they say level, they probably mean like actual like levels that you play through, not like settings. I don't know. That would be interesting to know. Easy level will keep you on your toes and your finger on the fire button. Special weapons are available only in limited quantities. Use them sparingly, as some obstacles are impassable without particular weapons. Fire up your cybernetic turbo engines and take off. Oh, wait a minute, they've got these little meters here. Now, what is this? Hold on a second. Lo and behold, we've got some little meter here. Graphics and sound. This is some kind of like a review system. Graphics and sound, 3.5. Play control, 2.5. Challenge, 3. And theme or fun, a 3. So, pretty mediocre across the board. I wonder if any game ever gets blasted by these power and player meter things. Man, there's like, see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games featured that are given some kind of like a meter score, and only one of them dips below the halfway point, and that's Genghis Khan with a, what do we got here? A play control rating of 2.5 out of 5. Oh, and wait a minute, on the scale they're using, that is the halfway point, isn't it? Oh, man. I don't know. I guess I'd have to reserve judgment until I browse through a number of these magazines. Then we've got NES Achievers, where you could send in your score on a game to get on these kind of printed leaderboards, as it were. And they've got some instructions on how to capture your score here. Turn out the lights, place the camera on something steady, make sure you don't use a flash, adjust the height. The camera should be about a yard from the TV, and then they tell you where to mail your submission to. I remember when they changed how the restrictions on this, you had to include your NES, your video game console, in the picture so that they could make sure you weren't using a Game Genie. Back on the topic of trying to sell stuff to you, look at this, under short takes, just kind of like these random little articles, I guess, or whatever they want to say at the end here. Captain Nintendo wants you to give him a call. Have you called the Captain Nintendo tip recording lately? If not, you may be interested to know that he has a new adventure story format. The Captain is now available exclusively on his own 900 line, 1-900-420-6100. Somebody let me know if that number's still working. A 2-minute call to Captain Nintendo costs only $1.50. In each message, which is changed weekly, you'll hear the latest tips on some of the hottest games available, and also get information on what games are going to be on store shelves soon at NES retailers. So, hey, pay us to try and sell you games. This is a great deal, considering that the cost is the same no matter where you call from, and for some people, maybe even cheaper than calling the gameplay counselors. If you haven't called the Captain recently, you just don't know what you're missing. Here's a schedule of what games Captain Nintendo will give tips on in the coming weeks. Week of January 21st, DuckTales, week of January 28th, Dragon Warrior, week of February 4th, Willow, and the week of February 11th, Iron Sword. If you don't pay your phone bill but want to call Captain Nintendo, set up an IOU system with the person who pays the bill. You could also pay them in advance. We want to make sure you understand all the different ways that you could possibly take advantage of this service. $1.50. I did a quick Googling and discovered that $1 in 1990 is $1.93 in 2018. So that's almost doubled. So we're talking today that would be the equivalent of about a $3 phone call to go and get tips for one particular game that may or may not be useful to you, and also to have other games promoted to you, and I guess some little new adventure story. Oh, man. Then they've got celebrity profiles, which I don't know if this is a feature in every issue, but I remember seeing it a few times, where they take some TV star, movie star. I remember Kirk Cameron was featured in one of these from Growing Pains, and they talk about what video games they play on the set or whatever, or, at home, and yeah, it's really, I don't know what that's about. And if you haven't heard about enough games that are available or coming soon, they have a whole section called Pack Watch, because I guess games were called game packs back then. A look into the future of NES game packs. So there's like Super C, Wrath of the Black Manta, Remote Control, Snake Rattle and Roll, The Adventures of Lolo 2, Wall Street Kid. Anyway, that's a fun little diversion if you want to take a trip down memory lane. I'm considering maybe incorporating these Nintendo Power issues into next year's Summer of Free, maybe looking at a different issue every week or every month or something like that. That strikes me as being something kind of fun to do. But anyway, again, you can find these issues of Nintendo Power available digitally over at archive.org. Archive.org. That's it for the Summer of Free for this entire year. We are wrapping up the Summer of Free now. I hope that you've enjoyed it, and you can also get past entries from the Summer of Free archived over at summeroffree.com. If you want to celebrate the Summer of Free, you can actually do so year-round by visiting that website, where all the previous Summer of Free segments are kind of like archived and cataloged. Again, that's over at summeroffree.com. All right, we'll do more of this next summer. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Let's begin.
Burn, ungodly filth!
What do you want? To make you ours or to make you despair?
Spirit Blade Productions presents
Did you have any idea how much I will make you suffer? The horrific agony that I will inflict.
Spirit Blade Dark Ritual.
Hell will be a refuge for you when I'm finished.
For more information, visit spiritblade.com.